here with a very, very special guest, one of the legends within this field, within this on YouTube, and that's Mal from, well, I was about to say a certain name, a certain corner, but Islamic origins. So, guys, let me know if you are hearing me. Just give me a 1 in the comments, please.
Yeah, I forgot to update my name there.
Oh, okay, Islamic. Okay, we have good audio, Mal. We are good to go. So, Mal, thank you for being here. I mean, you obviously, Jay was the man who started this whole revolution, and you followed, in his footsteps, and you inspired me. So, and here we are.
Oh, wow.
So,
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, I'm actually honored to have had any small part in inspiring you, because you're doing Trojan work. I met Jay at Speaker's Corner, how long ago? 8 or 9 years ago. And like anyone watching YouTube, I saw him on YouTube and I thought, oh, it'd be great to meet him at Speaker's Corner. And I was like his biggest fan, I was at the back of the crowd watching him, what's the word? Just arguing with Muslims from the ladder, and had a coffee with him afterwards. And he was I've met him at the time that he was increasingly getting involved in the historical critique, but he was still doing the old methodology as well, which is kind of mocking the hadiths and so on. But he was gradually moving that way, and every so often I'd feed him sort of information that I found. I'd say, "Oh, Jay, have you seen this paper? Have you seen that?" And I don't know if I played any part in getting him to move entirely towards the historical critique, but I think it was the best move he ever made, because I think his channel has really exploded over the last few years.
Like, he shattered the standard paradigm, the standard narrative. He shattered that whole concept. Yes. I remember watching him at Hyde Park revealing those 24 or 25 Qurans, and I was like, wait, hold up. This changes everything.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like, how did they manage to keep that quiet for so long? This is the thing. And what else have they kept quiet for so long? It's like, that's just the tip of the iceberg. This is why I think the historical critique is so powerful, because you don't know what you're going to discover, and it's almost impossible for Muslim to argue against what we're saying, because all we're doing is saying, well, we're just asking questions and you're not providing any answers, and this source says this, whereas you say that. Who's telling the truth here?
Very well said.
They fall back to silly arguments. They start bringing up, the Trinity and so forth. I'm sure Alonzo Harris would probably be in the chat now saying Mel believes in 3 gods. Oh, glory! Come on,
man.
How many times do we have to respond to that silly argument? And it's just like they can't even bother to paint their opponent's beliefs correctly. It's fine if I literally believed in 3 gods and that argument was used, then I go, oh, you got me there. Yeah, that's a good one. But the fact that they don't even understand what Christians actually believe, and then they think they've got a brilliant argument, it's so lazy. But yeah.
Agreed. I mean, Thaddeus has blocked Alonzo, I think, 40 times on 40 different accounts.
Yeah. Keeps coming back under a different superhero name.
Yeah, I know. And they appeared on my channel recently. I didn't block them, but just deleted the comment. But yeah, Lloyd believes in 3 gods. You're like, okay, man, that's getting a little on my nose. Spring is coming. My nose is itching these days.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no,
so I don't know if that answers your question. That's what got me into it. I'm just trying to think.
Well, let me switch over to the next channel. So guys, this is Mal's channel, right? Islamic Origins. And this is the banner on his channel, which is quite an amazing picture. And his channel is at Islamic Origins. It's linked in the description box of this, but also in the title of this video. And these were some questions that I set for Mal, and we can always add some more as we go.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, so to get back to the sort of the original question and how we got into it, yeah. So I engaged with Jay and Hatun. I was friendly with them at Speaker's Corner, and eventually I set up a small little channel, and for ages I had maybe 50 subscribers, and I was just I started off just kind of mocking some of the the things that Muslims say at Speaker's Corner. And then I got a bit more serious and said, well, actually, how did Islam really begin? And it just kept delving into it, just asking random questions. And I literally went down every cul-de-sac that I can. And some people say, oh, but you said one time this. Well, I would test a theory out to destruction until I was satisfied, okay, that's wrong. Okay, we'll try this one out. What originally kind of intrigued me was the question of Isa. And there was a few things that made me think, well, was Muhammad Irish? And you might kind of laugh about it now, but in Ireland, Isa is the name for Jesus in Irish, in Gaelic. Wow. And I thought, that's interesting. And so why is that? And as it turned out, it's just one of those things with language that it can be common sounds when you translate from one language to another. But and then there was the idea of Muhammad having red hair, and then the further I went into it, I realized, well, actually, there's an awful lot of the hadiths are just nonsense as well. And then the whole red hair thing was kind of insinuating, as what Red Judaism referred to, you know, like the red Jews, the red-haired Jews, you know, had that kind of implications. Yeah. Anyway, we over the space of 3 years, I've kind of tried out different ideas and kept trying to educate myself, trying to read as many historians as I can and question the standard narrative. Yeah. You know, Yasser Qadhi's statement about the standard Islamic narrative has holes. I think he said the standard narrative has holes. That was a gift to all of us, because we knew they had holes, but we had that phrase. And I think not long after that, I was on Jay's channel, and as a joke, I basically came up with an acronym SIN, and we've kind of ran with that since, because it's quite handy. Yeah. And then from there, we kind of went increasingly towards a northern narrative. So the idea was, I was reading, sorry, I might be jumping around here, but I was reading Stephen Shoemaker's book about the death of Muhammad, and he has some very interesting narratives, sources. And I considered that, well, what happened in the 7th to 8th century? They must have had a narrative before the current one. And so I basically imagined that they must have had a northern narrative, which was focused on places like a little bit of Persia, or Iran, as you might call it, and Jerusalem, and all those areas way up in the north, which basically are biblical areas. That's what I imagined. And then when everything moved to Mecca in the middle of the 8th century, or as far as we know, then a southern narrative was developed, and then it kept changing over time.
Can you see my screen? Yeah, because I just added my screen share there. This is something that I discovered last year, which I had featured on my channel in a video. This is literally the earliest evidence of Christianity in Arabia, with the origin of the name Isa. This is a rock written by a Christian, and it says here, so before Muhammad, ancient Arabian tribes adopted Christianity, and then recent discoveries show evidence of Christianity from pre-Islamic Arabia. So this is here in a place called Hara. So it'll be somewhere southeast of Damascus and east of Amman, north of Petra, northeast of Petra. And this is the area this was found in. They found thousands of inscriptions here, dating to about the 4th century. The inscription invokes Jesus, with the name given for Jesus in the Quran. And it's in Safayitic.
Dr. Ahmed Al-Jalad has spent a lot of work on that.
And this is it here. And so this is very interesting. So Isa is reflected here. This was part and parcel of Arabia, apparently.
Oh yeah. That's something I found as well. That whole area was referred to as Arabia for centuries before it got transferred. The other thing that, in terms of the use of the name Isa there, Dr. Al-Jalad basically argues that this was a name that existed before Christianity, and it meant redeemer, or someone who pays the price, and it was used as the equivalent for Yeshua, and that's essentially why you have some Arabs using that, whereas others use a more standard translation, which is Yeshua.
Yeah, I wanted to. Hold on. I'm just going to share this page here. There were a number of gods that the pagans adopted in response to meeting the Christians who were coming into that area. And so they started to add new gods to their pantheon. One of those gods is Yata, which the Ta and the Sha are sort of interchangeable within that region, depending on the dialect. And so they created a god called Yasha associated with salvation. His name is Savior. And it's Yasha, meaning salvation. So this is something very, very unusual. And they also then created Dul Khalasa, god of redemption. And his temple was known as the Kaaba of Yemen.
But the adoption of like a Christian god is very like, and no disrespect to Hindus watching, but Hindus often have statues of Jesus, and they've included it as part of their worship. So it's very similar. And this would explain why there's this, what's the word, synthesis between pagan elements and Christian elements together. I haven't seen this before, apart from maybe the conversation we had a couple of weeks ago, but this is great stuff.
Yeah, no, I did a very, very detailed, as you know, monotheism, and you can trace the gods through that region from Baal, Molech, all the way to Allah. And I mean, all of them at some point were called Allah. And Allah, in fact, Muhammad in the Sirah is consecrated to Hubal. Hubal, he who is Baal.
Ooh.
Right?
Oh, that's bad.
No, he is literally consecrated to Hubal, to Baal, by his grandfather at the Kaaba, and Baal was the Allah of the Kaaba. I mean, and this is in the Islamic sources. This is definitively in the Islamic sources. There's no ambiguity there.
Yeah, and the Baal is connected to Moloch, which and this is huge. Like, I don't think Muslims realize how big a deal this is.
No, they're effectively the same god. Baal, Moloch. Yes, and Moloch was the Allah of the Kaaba.
Oh, this is really bad, because like in the Bible, Moloch is associated with the sacrifice of children, and connected very much to Jerusalem as well, because the valley next to the Temple Mount was used a few centuries before Jesus' time to sacrifice children, and it was, pretty horrible.
Well, on that point, what might be interesting is that the term Malik, Abd al-Malik, derives from Moloch, which is Moloch. You see, because Abd al-Malik originally was a Yemeni term, so you were the slave of the Malik. Now, the Abd al-Malik was the emperor, but who is the emperor a slave to? Well, he's the slave to the god. So the Abd al-Malik, the slave of the Malik, is the Abd of Moloch, the slave of Moloch.
Oh, this is dark stuff,
man. Now, I've covered this in detail in my monotheism series. So in fact, Allah is in Strong's dictionary. It's Hebrews 4:22, and it means curse. So
and do you know what's interesting, actually, what fits with what you've said about Abd al-Malik is in one video that I did about a year and a half ago, I think I did it with Jay. I went through sources that deal with possession, and there was a real spate of possessions that were happening, and they even affected Abd al-Malik's family, and he actually had to call in a priest from the Christians to try and exorcise one of his children. And in return for that, he allowed them to build a church. I think it was in Persia.
Oh yes, I watched that show. Yes.
So this would make sense if he's enthroning. This is actually a very important point about any sort of paganism or conscious Satanism, which is essentially what this is. By doing that type of thing, you are enthroning the devil in your area and giving the devil increased power to bring about evil and so forth. So I can only imagine on a spiritual level what, the advent of Islam brought about an awful lot of evil, which might explain a lot of the immoral behavior that and killing and so on that went hand in hand with this movement.
Yeah. If I can mention, originally, so the term caliph superseded the term Abd al-Malik. Now Abd al-Malik was like Caesar. When people say Caesar, they think, Julius. However, there were 12 Caesars. just like there was a multitude of Abd al-Maliks. There were numerous ones. Now, the term Abd al-Malik replaced the term Muqarib or Muqaribal. Okay? The Muqaribals. The Muqarib, mu, is one who serves, one who submits to. Muslim.
Yeah.
Muslim, right? One who serves. And the Muqaribal, this is actually short for one who serves the servant of Baal.
Yeah.
Right? Muqaribal. So this was too on the nose. They replaced it with Abd al-Malik, but that was too on the nose, so they replaced it with Caliph. And as a final point, the word
concealment
the word Salim, the root of Islam, okay, it means multiple things. We're always told it means Shalom, it means Salam, but the original use of it, right? We're always told about Islam, the original root is to an image, a heathen god, and it originally refers to Shalim, an ancient pagan god.
Yeah, and actually, what this fits in with the fact that you can have multiple meanings and you can hide the deeper meaning, which is obviously Gnostic, but it's occultic, the hiding of inner meaning. So you can have a public meaning, but then you can have this private, darker meaning.
Yeah, and Islam does claim within the Sharia explicitly to be Gnostic. I mean, have I showed you that before?
I've seen some parts of what you've done. Actually, one of the things I do intend to do is try and catch up on your work because I
wonder. So let me show you a couple of things, and then I'll leave the floor open to you after that and the questions and the audience. But I appreciate your indulgence. So Ray Johnson, welcome. Villainous, thank you for being here. Dragon Pro-Life Chloe, wow, good to see you, Chloe. We have Anela, Dragon, of course. I'll have to mention you twice because you're such a loyal supporter. Thank you. Deduza.
Absolutely.
Yenyen, welcome. Anakatana, welcome. Kitsune, Shamshir. So everyone is here. Thank you very much for being here. Okay, so this is the Reliance of the Traveler, the world's most popular and most common Islamic law manual, or sharia, fiqh manual. They speak of the scholars learning to attain the spiritual vision of annihilation, station in Gnostic vision, right? So they're doing rituals to develop Gnostic insight. Okay, they speak of like the problems you face when you start to achieve the gnosis or learning to develop the gnosis. They then go on to say that all those other plebs, they thought that they had attained the gnosis, right? That they'd reached nearness to Allah, but they were just jokers because we Muslims, we have attained to gnosis. We attained it. And they speak of the Gnostics, it goes on and on, the Gnostic spiritual will exalted above all else. So they go on and speak about how the scholars are Gnostics, how they go through all sorts of rituals. See?
Well, this kind of explains a little bit about the rejection of Christianity as well, because they're rejecting a salvation won through the sacrifice of Jesus. They believe their salvation comes through knowledge, which is the essence of Gnosticism.
Yes.
And it's fake. It's something rejected as a heresy from day one.
Yeah, I will be doing a series on Gnosticism starting shortly, and I've already done a couple of installments with the Gnostic parallels with Islam, the Gnostic roots and antecedents of Islam, and people I think really. In fact, that series is the most watched. One of those is the most watched episode on Thaddeus' channel ever.
Wow, that sounds brilliant.
Most watched live stream on his channel, even more than the David Wood stream. So there's a few more questions here. If there's anything you'd like to tackle, otherwise, if you want to go to your share, we can do that now.
You pick a question and I'll respond. Which one do you want to go on next?
So what challenges have you faced? Number 3. Because you've said that the most meaningful discoveries you've made is always the latest discovery. Right? It's always so many puzzles, and eventually it's locks that you're picking, and you just pick a new lock, and it's great. But what challenges have you faced? And do you see that polemics are changing? Do you see that Muslims are responding badly to this? Do you see that they're having problems?
Yeah, I think there's a number of challenges I've faced in challenges. First of all, it's not actually Muslims that are the biggest challenge for me. It's actually other polemicists or apologetics. Is they don't necessarily buy into what we're doing.
Other Christians that give you a hard time about it.
Absolutely. They don't like. I have to persuade them. Actually, no, we're onto something here. No, it sounds like you're you're coming up with a conspiracy theory, and I'm like, no, there's something to this, and it takes them. It's actually harder to convince them than it is Muslims.
Wow,
Muslims who are
Mel, I had
anyways
no idea.
interested.
Yes, that is true.
That's, I think, the biggest challenge. The other thing is it's a less of a challenge, but still a bit of a challenge. There's an awful lot of material which is hidden behind a paywall, and which is a pity. So a lot of the material that we could potentially use is hard to get. I recently bought a couple of books, so I can't show them. Well, maybe I can
Let
show
me
them
share. Let me share
across my
your
chest.
screen. So let me
Yeah,
disable my capture, enable your capture.
yeah.
Here we
You
go.
see
You're
that?
showing now.
Yeah, so these are a couple of books that I got
Right.
recently, and they're by Beverly Mortensen. These came to about 170 quid, so they're not cheap, And it literally for one particular little minutia of information, I purchased these, but it's just a pity it's so hard to get hold of these. But it might come to answer question two, which you had, which was um, I don't know if you want to go back to that other slide a second again,
With the
if you
questions.
don't mind.
Which slide?
Question two, what was it? What has been the most meaningful discovery you've made? Well, not so much a discovery I've made, but a discovery I've heard that isn't widely known. But there's a targum called Targum Pseudo Jonathan, right? And the majority of the majority of scholars have basically said, "Oh, this is a 13th century document. This is an 18th, 16th. They can't even make up their mind." And the reason they think this is they say, "Well, other it's clearly quoting from other sources that were written later, and they don't imagine that it could be the other way around." Now, what Beverly Mortensen has done is she has done work that no one else has done, which is she has analysed every little line in it, all the expansions. Which now, just to give you a background, the Targum is basically an exegesis of the Torah, essentially, and it focused on the priesthood. And she argues that this must have been written in the 4th century, at the time that when Emperor Julian gave Jews permission to build a temple on the Temple Mount. So obviously they haven't had access to the temple. The priesthood has been sort of sidelined for centuries. The Levites would have been the people who would have been expected to do the priestly activities. And basically, what this Targum was all about is analyzing the Torah and picking out key bits of information that are relevant to the priesthood.
Mhm.
I think she makes a really good argument, but there's a bit of a bombshell, and this is, I think, why the scholars do not want to admit this is from the 4th century. Because, quote you, Genesis 21:21, right? In the Targum, it says, it quotes the Hebrew, which says, "He dwelt in Pharaoh, married an Egyptian whom his mother brought him." That's straight from the Bible. Then the expansion, which is in the Targum, says, "He first married Adisha, put her away, then married Fatima, whom," and then it goes dot dot dot. Right? So we got Adisha. Now, if you were to write Adisha and you drop the D and convert it to Arabic by putting, if you like, what I would say an apostrophe. I'm sure that's not the correct term. So if you just, yeah, and then just put apostrophe instead of the D. Yeah, what you got Aisha. So you got a reference to, this is in relation to uh, Ishmael. So Ishmael, according to this Targum, first married Aisha, put her away, then married Fatima. And it doesn't take a genius to work out that these two people are connected to Muhammad.
Yeah.
Now, and if we think about who is the most important figure in Islam, well, obviously Muhammad, but who next? Who would be also important? Well, obviously Abraham, but someone who's distinctly important to them is Ishmael, because the Arabs consider Ishmael to be really the father of their race. The Arabs aren't a race, but you know what I mean.
Hmm.
They trace themselves back. So in this Targum, if we accept her argument, and it's a very complex argument, I haven't read through all of it, and it goes to hundreds and hundreds of pages where she explains why it's from the 4th 4th century. But if we accept it, it makes perfect sense that the Muslims, when they're developing the mythology around Muhammad, saw that Ishmael was connected to Aisha or Adisha originally and Fatima, and then these stories were spun to make sense of that. What I can't understand is you've got hundreds of intelligent scholars, and they're arguing that this targum must have come after Islam. That the Jews copied Islam. There's no way the Jews copied something from Islam.
I did it.
It makes no sense for them, and to put it in there would make absolutely no sense, because by say the 8th or 9th century, it would be so silly to kind of put Ishmael marrying Aisha, which is one of Muhammad's wives, and then marrying Fatima, which is one of Muhammad's daughters. That makes no sense. But certainly makes sense the other way around. Like that's what I think. I don't know what people think viewing it, but I think this is one of the smoking guns of where Islam got all its stories. Now, if this means that Aisha is fake, is a fictional person, you think about how many hadiths are based on the witness of Aisha.
Correct.
It must be 70 or 80%.
I mean, Patricia Crone has basically stated, and so has Goldsey and others stated, that the hadith are fake out and out. I mean, many do have a history. In fact, the hadiths were originally called the Israeliyat, right? They were originally called, the hadiths originally were called Israeliyat. These were the stories from the Mishnah. And
there we go.
And what happened was the Muslims dropped the term Israeliyat and then used the term hadith. But originally these were Jewish stories that they copied, but they wanted to stop making that attribution look bad for them, so they changed it.
Yeah.
And
so I think, I think what they've done is in the targums they have the exegesis on the scripture, and what they've done is they've done an exegesis on the exegesis, and in doing so they have created these fables and stories, and then what they've done is they've done further exegesis on the exegesis on the exegesis, and the story is just expanded. So if you were to look at the hadiths and stories and books and so on, over time we see it's going up exponentially. That's not the way things normally work. It's normally over time you have less and less additional material. You usually get the bulk of the material close to the time.
Correct. Patricia Crone makes that statement as well, that the early ones are less detailed and the later ones are far more detailed. So they are adding secreting details as time goes forward, which is the wrong direction. On that point, absolutely. I raised this with you earlier, and I discovered this today. It's a text I've read before, and it never clicked with me to look at this particular section. It says here, in Ezekiel 5:5, thus saith the Lord God, this is Jerusalem, I have set it in the midst of the nations and countries that are round about her. And this Muslim author tells us, as noted in part 1 of his book, Jerusalem is one of the names of Mecca. He then goes on to say that this coincides with what God mentioned in the Quran about Mecca, and this is a book in which we have sent down, blessed and confirming what was before it, that you may warn the mother of cities, Mecca, and those around it. So he goes on to claim that this biblical verse, Ezekiel 5:5, is specifically in reference to Mecca, not Jerusalem. He says here, Lee, 2001, explained the first verse, the middle of the earth and a blessed place, as referring to Jerusalem. Hence, this chapter in Enoch is depicting the topography of Jerusalem as the potential temple site. This chapter is also portraying its location as full of trees, a sacred mountain, another higher mount, another mount, 2 mounts, Safa and Marwa, a stream. All of these descriptions apply to Mecca, whose name is also Jerusalem. They correspond to the geography of Mecca as lying between mountains with streams and valleys. Yeah, Mecca is just a lush valley today. Furthermore, according to Sprenger in 1851, the valley in which Mecca now stands was in the 4th century, a sacred forest. So this is blatant. This is bold and blatant. Your thoughts, Mel?
Yeah, I'm actually. I've just opened up a PowerPoint here. I wonder, can I share it?
Let me unshare mine, and you are free to go. Yeah. There you go. Yeah. So your screen is being shared now. This of images and idols you've got there.
Yeah. Have you got this one here?
Oh, what are you sharing? It depends what you're sharing. Are you sharing
I'm sharing a thing about. It's
So
Mount
no,
Scopus.
stop sharing and then
No.
just share your whole
Okay,
screen, share
let's
your
do
full
it.
screen or
Okay, let
something
me just
best
see.
because you are currently
Okay, let me just
sharing
see.
just a single PowerPoint. So
Okay. Let me just see. I'm trying to get into the.
I think you selected to share just the PowerPoint.
Okay.
So
Yeah. Let me just try it again. Um, okay. If I start sharing and see that now.
yeah, it's coming up. So just give it a moment.
Okay. So this is an image of.
Give it a second.
Wait, take a moment.
Share screen. It's nothing's coming through right now. It's still trying to load. It's showing the Skype
Okay.
loading screen for the
Yeah.
share.
Yeah. Just wait till it comes through. So what I have is a satellite image of Jerusalem, and we'll see Safa and Marwa happens to be in Jerusalem as well, which
Oh,
is another
great. Now I need to
parallel.
fix you again.
So is there a problem there with it?
Yeah, it's not coming up. Yeah, but I'm having fun in games with you as well because I should have. Well, there you go. You're back. For some
Yeah.
reason, your share is not coming through.
Yeah. Do you want me to try it again? Let's just see if that helps.
Yeah, no. Every time you change your screen res, because now I need to fix you because
Yeah.
yeah, OBS is always entertaining to work with. Oh, there it's coming through now again.
Yeah. You
Give
got
it
it?
there it is.
Okay. Now, so there's the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem, right? So Mount Moriah in Arabic, Moriah is Marwa. So there you have Marwa. And here's Mount Scopus. Well, Josephus, who wrote about 2,000 years ago, he said that its alternative name is Mount Safa or Safa. So you have Marwa and Safa. So they took ideas, they took places in Jerusalem and they transposed them to the new Jerusalem being Mecca. Why they decided to move down there, I've never really
It's a blank
found a
slate. They could start
satisfactory.
over because there was no evidence
Yeah,
against them there because, you know,
yeah,
to prove that they
yeah,
are lying, basically.
yeah. But apart from it being a blank slate, there's nothing significant about it that I can see. There's no positive reasons to pick there rather than any other place
I've
down.
been in that region. I've worked out there. I've
Yeah,
been to Taif, which is about 80 k's east of it, eastish. I've been around the area. I've been to Jeddah a couple of times. I've driven around Mecca
yeah,
because you're not allowed to get very close if you're not Muslim,
yeah,
and there's nothing out there.
yeah. That valley that's in between, that is the place that Muslims believe is going to be the when the apocalypse occurs. Everything, that's the really key place for them. Let me just see if I can move on, and yeah, there it is there. And you also have Hinnom, which is mentioned 101 times in the Quran, which again reinforces the idea of the centrality of Jerusalem. Now, the last time I looked, Mecca is mentioned once in the Quran, but
Yeah.
this particular location, Hinnom, is mentioned 101 times in the Quran in different forms.
Well,
So you have Jahannam, Jahin in Jerusalem, as you see there in the corner. But let me just show you here. So these are various Muslim sources, and you can see how important Jerusalem is there. So let's just pick one here. Let me see. This should be it. There we go. The Rock of Jerusalem is one of the rocks of paradise. We find in the Torah that God said to the Rock of Jerusalem, "You are my lowest throne, and from you I ascended into heaven, and below you the earth is extended, and all the water that flows from the tops of the mountains comes from below you." Do you see how central Jerusalem is? Jerusalem is the land which Allah has chosen from among the other lands.
yeah.
God will destroy Gog and Magog in Jerusalem. So
Well,
these are Muslim sources, so we're
well,
not making this
biblically
up.
speaking,
Yeah,
Jerusalem is the center of the world.
yeah,
So if you look at the way that if you go back historically, the way the world was, there were three realms. There was the realm below, the realm above, and there was the earth. And Jerusalem was the world tree. It was the center of the world, and that's why they need to take that status to Muslims because they believe that Mecca is Allah's hand in the earth. that it is the home of Allah. And also, oddly enough, that's a very pagan idea in terms of idolatry, because the rock or the statue was literally, you would call the god would come to earth and live. The rock or the statue was a home for the god on earth. So you would call that god to that rock or statue, and they would live there. So this actually is literally idolatry.
Yeah. I think they also what they've done is they've taken Jewish ideas and they've mixed it in their cauldron of magical ideas. They mixed the Shekinah, the idea of the presence of God, as being present in certain key locations. So, for example, in the 7th and 8th centuries, um, wherever the Exilarch lived, the Jewish Exilarch, that was where the Shekinah, the Holy Spirit, rested there. But Muslims took that idea and they basically placed the presence of God, as it were, in the Kaaba. But with a lot of ideas which aren't very well thought out, there's a contradiction, of course, because Allah is not allowed to enter creation.
Mm-hmm.
So they're borrowing things that really don't fit their overall theology. I don't know how they manage to make sense of it themselves. It has to lead to a kind of some sort of neurosis or psychosis when they have these contradictory ideas that they don't make sense, you know. But anyway, any other questions or points?
So, I mean, questions that I had. So, does the audience have any questions for Mel? So what do you think are the most important aspects of understanding the history of Islam? That's question 4.
What is the most? Can I see? Can you show me the question? Just try to take it
Let me
out.
just share my screen. We just unshare
Yes, sir.
yours for a moment. There we go.
Let's see it just yet. I'm not seeing it. No.
Let me
Or
go.
maybe no. Or maybe just repeat the question.
Let me just
again
share
for
my
me,
screen
so I
to
can-
you. I'll just share my
Yeah.
screen. There we go. I'm now sharing my
Like this.
screen.
Okay, number 4. What do you think are the most important aspects of understanding history? Ooh, it's a good question. What do you most? I'm trying to get my head around it. I think the most important thing is to throw out the Islamic sources. They are by and large worthless. But I'm thinking particularly the Sirah, the Hadiths, the Sirah, as far as I'm aware, has been put together by a German scholar. This was something that Jay Smith told me recently, and I couldn't believe it. I just assumed it was written by Hisham.
No, he's found that
And
that scholar, I believe, has discovered there are multitudes. Remember, I told you more than a year ago, some time ago, that you asked me about the Sirah, and I said, which one? I said, I have at least 50.
oh yeah,
That just in English. And I said, there's many more in Arabic that I can't translate, but there are dozens and dozens of Sirah.
Dozens of them. Yeah.
And this scholar has translated, and he's discovered that that apparently the Sirat Rasulullah was just randomly chosen. There are much better, much older ones.
Yeah. So I would say that the most important aspect in terms of understanding, you basically have to forget the standard Islamic narrative. You have to throw it out or be willing to question every part. So if Muslim says, well, Aisha was blah, 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 well, you say, well, give me the evidence that there is a person called Aisha. Well, we have her dress. Yeah, but how do we know this actually belonged to her? Or this is her house. Okay, yeah, but this could be like a Walt Disney production here.
Well,
how do we know?
Well, do you know we also have Muhammad's footprint in a rock?
What was that?
You know that we also have Muhammad's footprint in a rock.
Yeah,
I'm not
supposedly.
kidding.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, these are some of the kind of the superstitious sort of stuff there's that they produce as evidence. But what we're not seeing is really early attestations to back up the story. Why is there no really early account? Why is it that the earliest Sirah is supposedly 200 years after the time? What was happening in the meantime? I would suggest that what's happened is there were multiple versions of narratives that kept changing over time. There were narratives under the Umayyads, and then they were basically thrown out, and then new narratives were written to suit the Abbasids, And then I would suggest that probably under the Ottomans there was an attempt to rewrite the story to suit the Ottomans, because if you were the person in power, you need a narrative that suits your agenda. So, and they had no qualms about changing it,
Right.
So that, I would say that's the thing. Going back to the early sources, using rock inscriptions, using coins is essential. Using early accounts, preferably neutral accounts if possible. These are hard to come by. Obviously, if you use a Christian source, there's a question of it's a hostile witness, but at least you get some contrary voice that might question some of the claims.
Right. I have here this claim from an Islamic source. The Qadam Rasul, or footprint of the Prophet, the faith believer, whenever Muhammad trod on a rock, his foot always left an imprint. Of course, in the Sirah, he left no shadow because he was pure light. And these are popular miracles, and both of his feet are venerated. His feet are actually venerated. His footprints are venerated. And in the Dome of the Rock, the most famous of these footprint shrines is the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. It marks the place where the Prophet mounted the Burak and set off on his night journey. And his foot is supposed to have left an imprint on the rock. And from the 4th century onwards, the marks on the rock in the center of the Church of the Ascension is shown to pilgrims as footprints made by Christ at the moment of his ascension. Now, isn't that odd that in the 4th century was that tradition, and then the Muslims are like, oh yeah, well, you see that foot, that's not Jesus, that's Momo.
I think they call it cultural appropriation. When you take something that belongs to another culture, you say, yeah, we'll have that.
And it dates to the time of the Abd al-Malik in the 7th century. So he was the guy that orchestrated that particular plagiarism. And
yeah, well, there's I think we, myself and Thomas Alexander have had a difference of opinion on when the Dome of the Rock actually got built, and it's still kind of not fully clear, but there are certain questions about whether the Dome of the Rock actually was built at the time that is claimed now, and whether the key inscription that's there did come from the 7th century or not. I have massive doubts based on the lack of reference to that inscription. It only seemed to be referred to, I think it was the 16th century as late as that, which seems to be at the time when there was a lot of religious change in the air across the board, across Europe and the Middle East. It seems to be like a new fervor. There was a kind of a belief that this was like an apocalyptic time,
Correct.
So I wouldn't be surprised if that was part of it.
Yeah, I just want to pause for a moment. Des Volt said earlier, please pray for my friend, Maria Remelard, who was laid to rest today at age 54, not even 6 months after having been diagnosed with cancer. And she says her daughter is about to have her first baby in 2 weeks. She looked forward to her first granddaughter and didn't make it. So I'm very sorry to hear that, Des Volt. So yeah, well, wish you all the best, and sorry that this happened. So our condolences and our thoughts go out to you. Yeah, Mal, I have this on the screen. Just something I've shown this to you before when we first chatted 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
But this is from the Sabaeans. The Sabaeans were the Yemeni pagans who worshipped Shin, who was also known occasionally as Baal. But his main name in Arabia was as the god Mecca. You may have heard of a small city in Arabia somewhere called Mecca.
Yeah, that rings a bell.
Does ring a bell. So the main pagan god, Shin, the Babylonian Shin, was known as Mecca in Arabia. These guys controlled Arabia for centuries. I mean, hundreds of years. And Mecca is Shin, is Baal, is Hubal, is Allah. In fact, Mecca is also known as Allah, and also Allah Ta'ala, which is one of the names associated with Allah today. And they were moon gods, pagans, pagan moon worshippers. And this scholar here claims that the Islamic practices are identical to those of the Sabaeans, the Yemeni Sabaeans.
That would not surprise me at all. And there is a connection between Haran way up in the north and Yemen way down.
Well, there's
the
a
south.
Haran in Yemen as well. In fact, they're named after the same source, Haran in Yemen. And they have the same 5 prayers. They have 2 optional prayers, which Islam does. They have the fast. They face the Kaaba when they pray. They venerate Mecca. And in fact, they had the Kaaba as well. They had their Mecca as well. So they have exactly the same laws as Islam, the same regulations, the same rules, and according to
Yeah.
this is identical. This pre-Islamic pagans had identical practices to modern Islam, and this is according to
And you
Islamic
know that
scholars.
in the Haran fast that they had, you know what the feast was called after the fast was
The
over
Fitr, probably, right?
in Bab Al Fitr, yeah, Al Fitr in Babylonian times. So we're talking the 6th century
Yeah.
BC, and
These guys go
Nabonidus.
back to the 8th century BC.
Oh yeah, yeah, but just in terms of a historical source, Nabonidus in the 6th century.
Hmm.
Not saying it started with them, just that he took a particular interest in promoting this across Arabia, and so um, back in the 1950s, a scholar discovered 4 stela under a mosque with inscriptions from the 6th century proclaiming Nabonidus's pilgrimage around Arabia. He was on a mission. He was basically spreading the worship of sin, and this is
Yes.
all on the
Yeah, I
inscription.
covered that.
So this is
Yeah.
not,
So good.
yeah. So this is not just speculation. Like there's solid evidence that there's a promotion of a pagan god, and it was connected with Haran. But which came first, whether it started in Yemen or Haran, I'm not sure. I'd be inclined to go with Haran,
Um,
but
on that
maybe
point, then
going
I should
further back, it might
mention
be
that.
Yemen. Yeah,
So let me. So yeah, it's a couple of things. So this is Hatra. This was a small Arab kingdom in Mesopotamia, just below Haran. Haran's up here, right?
yeah,
So the Arabs were trading. The Yemenis were literally trading into Turkey. So they took all of their stuff up, and they had a series of, shall we say, city-states slung across from the center of Mesopotamia here, all the way west as far as Petra. These cities were owned by the Arabs, so the Arabs were actually going up there. So the Arabs come first.
yeah,
Hatra is much younger, relatively speaking, but they
yeah,
had Baal Shaman there. Okay, they had multitudes of gods at their temples. They allowed people to worship all of their gods. There was a mixing because it was a commercial trade
yeah,
hub. And but
yeah,
this was an Arab kingdom in Mesopotamia, and there were several of them. As they would go up from here, they would go up north, then they would go west and south down to Petra, and then come back. So they had at least four of these city-states that the Arabs owned in Syria, near Turkey, in Mesopotamia, and so on. Even in the Petran kingdom, Nabatean kingdom.
yeah. So this was what kept this pagan cult going. So I would have thought that after Nabonidus' passing, that the cult of sin would have disappeared by that stage. But no, this is what kept it going until the time of the 7th century.
Yeah. No, there was a lot. There's a lot more. I covered this in detail. I mean, Nabonidus' mother obviously was the mother and sister were both high priestesses, the one in Haran and the one in Ur, at these
Yeah,
centers of moon worship. With the one here eventually became the Great Mosque, but it was, so there's just so many things that, I mean, yeah, there's just so many things to discuss. Like Allah is like in the Quran, for instance, the main chapter of the Quran is chapter 36, which is called Yasin. And the scholars like, we have no idea where this name comes from. It's a mystery to us. But of course, it's sin, right? And Allah in the Quran is the
yeah,
Lord of Sirius, right? The Lord
yeah,
of Sirius. And Sirius is obviously, so he's the moon, who is the head of the pantheon. Sirius is his son, right? And they
yeah,
speak in the Quran of this tribe that ruled Mecca for a long time prior to Muhammad's rule. They lived in Yemen, then they moved north. They worshipped Manat. Then became
yeah,
custodians of the Kaaba in Mecca, supposedly for 500 years, and they brought the idol called Hubal from Mecca to Syria. Okay, to Mecca from Syria, and they are genealogically connected to Muhammad through two family links. They are just,
yeah. I don't know
yep.
if I don't know if our audience are aware of this, but if you go to the previous slide for a second, you had a reference to Belshazzar. I think it might be the other
This
one.
one,
Let me see. Where
um,
was it? No, I don't think it was that one. Just try the next one. Might be the next one down. Let me see. Where did I see it?
what was the name?
That one,
What should I
maybe.
look for? Belshazzar.
Belshazzar. Where did I see it? I saw it in one of your slides a second ago. Maybe just go back down one.
Um,
Not too sure where it was. Is it there? No. Is it that one? No. No.
ah,
No. Not to worry. But in any case, the famous story in the book of Daniel where the writing is on the wall.
Yes. Oh, I have that. Yeah.
Belshazzar was the person that was in charge in Haran when Nabonidus was on his missionary work,
Yeah.
and God condemns his kingdom. And why is God so angry with the kingdom? Well, there's two reasons. First reason, it's sometimes referred to the feast of Belshazzar. But one of the reasons was they were using utensils from the temple in Jerusalem in their feast in Haran, which is of course mixing paganism
this one
with
here.
the
So let
Jewish
me just bring
object.
this one up. I found it. Here we go.
Yeah. But so one of the problems when God condemns this feast was the fact that they had taken utensils from the temple that were dedicated to God, and they were using it for this pagan feast. But the second is because the feast was dedicated to the god Sen, which is obviously a demonic being. Okay, so that's another connection again.
Yeah. So this is I've got this mentioned. I discussed some of this in detail in the monotheism, and there are so many links between the old pagan practices and Islam. It's really just not funny. And back to the question. So what are you hoping? I mean, how do you think your work contributes to the broader understanding of Islam, and what do you hope to accomplish?
I think we're heading towards achieving an overall explanation, a narrative that explains what actually happened. How did this religion start? Not a nonsense story that we've been told, but actually a historically based explanation. So the work that you're doing, the work that I'm doing, and Jay and others, they all complement each other, I think, because we're looking at it from different angles. So I think the Yemen connection, the Ethiopic connection, the northern connection, all together needs to be combined to get an overall sense of how Islam began. And I'm hoping that eventually, when it's all really clear, when we have every little aspect of it shown and evidenced, that the evidence will be irrefutable. Any Muslim who's anyways curious and really wants to know the truth will discover that they've been told a bunch of lies for their entire life, and that instead of being part of a religion that is purely monotheistic, in fact, it's not. It's a polytheistic religion dressed up as a monotheistic religion, and that's again the Gnostic. How would we say? That's the Gnostic lie that's there. Is that the fact it's pretending to be monotheistic, but you can't mix pagan gods in a religion and then turn around and say, well, no, we're a monotheistic faith. That it doesn't make sense. So back to you.
You made me. Someone asked a question about Abraha, and I need to actually go to find a reference you might find very interesting as to Abraha of the elephants, him of the elephants. And so once I find it, because Abraha has these inscriptions, and the word Muhammad is linked specifically to Allah and to Jesus. Right. But hold on. Now that I need to find it, obviously I struggle to find it. I just need to find Abraha, because you made me think of something, and then this question also popped up.
No, you feel free.
So
don't panic. Sure.
So let me just get back to the question while I search for this. The question was, so what do you hope to accomplish, as I said, and then the next one is, what advice would you give to someone who's interested in exploring the history of Islam?
Okay, pardon me, I'm eating here, but I think the advice I would give is don't try to be someone else when you're doing this research. Everyone has something to contribute. Early on, I discovered that I have a really bad memory. I'm not the sort of person that can remember line for line from the Quran. That wasn't my skill. So I went into a different area that suited what I'm able to do. So if you're not good with languages, go into an area that suits you and suits your skills. If your contribution is that you're going to pray for the team, that's a fantastic contribution. If your contribution is you've got IT skills or you can make videos, that's whatever it is you have to offer. That's what I would recommend. So just look at your own talents and don't be too hard on yourself, and just have confidence that whatever you do will make a difference. And there are a lot of people who do things in the background that don't get the limelight. There's hundreds of people, I'm sure you know many of them as well, who in the background are doing things. They're finding PDFs, they're finding little nuggets of gold, as it were, and they're passing it on to people like me and helping the collective work. So that's what I would recommend, is just think about what it is that maybe that fascinates you or that you feel that you might be good at, and then just go with it and just trust God in terms of what you can do. And you never know. You start off small, and you never know what it can lead to. And there's one individual who his channel, I'll have to share the link with you later, but who makes 3D cartoons about the Islamic story, and we're going to hire him to create a 3D video to express some of the things that we've discovered in terms of the historical critique. Some of those videos have had like 250,000
Wow.
views in Indonesia.
Wow.
Like, they are huge. They are absolutely huge. And the person had to leave the country because, for their own safety, and the people in the government have been trying to say, why isn't this person arrested? That kind of way.
Wow. Just
So,
for making these
it is-
videos. Because Islam's the religion
And
of
that
peace,
person-
right?
Yeah. So that person had IT skills to offer. So I would say just think about what it is you can do, and don't worry about is it going to change everything. Just say, well, I can do something, however small, and it can make a difference. And I think it's a bit like the story of the widow's mite, the Gospels. She dropped her little coin into the basket. No one else notices, but God notices. And that's what I would say. Just do your little bit, and you never know what impact it can have. But the great thing is there are literally thousands of people leaving Islam every year, and that number will only grow. And the only thing Islam has to offer is a high birth rate, but there's not a lot of people converting to Islam.
Yeah, in fact, I mean,
I think
most people, 95%
ratio
of
is
converts
2 to 1, I
leave
think.
within 2 years, and almost 100% are lost within less than 5 years.
Yeah.
I have these references here, the ones that I was referring to. So this is from some stuff I found. So 5349 calls Allah the Lord of Sirius. Okay, the South Arabian deity Wad is mentioned, right? These are all pagan gods, right? But this is referred to as Allah, but these were also pagan designations, right? Now, of course, they create this new god. So Muhammad, in the first 50 chapters of the Quran, he calls Allah Rahmanan, right? And then eventually he figures out, hold on, but the Christians and the Jews call Yahweh Rahmanan, and I better do something because I need an original god. So he goes Allah, right? Of course, Allah was the Baal but the new monotheist god is called Rahmanan in ancient South Arabian and often described as the Lord of heaven and earth. The Quranic name Al-Rahman is probably related to that. And one interesting inscription, this is from Abraha, right? Who, Abraha, the Axumite regent who went over and eventually, he's a real historical figure. One inscription ends after mentioning, well, read this yourself and you tell me what you think, Mel.
Okay, so one interesting inscription ends after mentioning Rahman with the phrase Rahman. Well, there's Muhammad there mentioned.
Yes, and keep going.
Yeah. Which is translated by the Lord of the Jews, by the highly praised. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
This is from a Christian. This is a Christian who wrote this. Abraha was an Ethiopian Christian, Trinitarian Christian, Orthodox, right?
Yeah.
Which means that Muhammad was referred to as God. the highly praised, was God. Muhammad become God. Read this, please. Have a look through this and tell me what you think.
Okay. The Sumya inscription ends with the invocation in the name of Rahman and of his son, the conquering Christ. Right, okay. Abraha's inscription contains equally clear formulas. The most significant is, which begins with, the power and help and mercy of Rahman, of his Messiah, and of his Holy Spirit. So actually, Rahman, it sounds to me like that's God the Father, and you have Jesus the Messiah and his Holy Spirit.
And the Muslims plagiarized this. So in the previous reference, the inscription reads, Rahad bin Muhammad, in praise of Muhammad, which is the God Yahweh, the God of the Bible. And this now becomes Muhammad. So this is the earliest references to Muhammad, was it to the Christian God?
I think there is a verse in and maybe it appears more than once, where it's referring to Rahman, but it's like a 3-part formula. So based on what you've just shown me, that could actually be reference to the Trinity.
Yes. No, because the Ethiopians are very strongly Trinitarian. And
absolutely,
they also, few people are aware that in the 2nd century, they conquered Arabia as well. And they controlled that region. And they had a Bible, the full Bible, in Arabia in the 2nd and 3rd centuries. And Muhammad, also, if you look at, hold on, if I go back up here, without going through all of this in too much detail.
I know, just as you're looking, there was a 6th century translation of the Bible into Ethiopic, where the word, instead of the word Satan being used, they used the word shaitan, which is the only,
because it's an Ethiopic word.
Place.
Yeah, it's an
Ethiopic word. See, it's not. They're not using the standard Aramaic word. Let's call it, for that would have been used more widely in the culture. So that's another smoking gun.
So so there's a lot to be discussed here, but I don't want to go too much. But there was massive trade with Abyssinia. They were so Abyssinian, philologically Ethiopic, the ancient language of Abyssinia, is the most closely related to Arabic of all the Semitic tongues. Okay, and so in fact, Southern Arabian became Arabic, which is actually derived from largely Ethiopic. Now, the contacts were fairly close. I mean, that is not disputed. And then, of course, amongst other things, Muhammad's first nurse from his birth to his death, right? The woman, so the only person who was with him his entire life, birth to death, was an Abyssinian Christian woman, Ayman. The first man he chose as muezzin was Ethiopic. And according to the Muslim traditions, Muhammad spoke only one other language than Arabic, and that was Ethiopic. And in the Quran, it speaks of him listening to the Ethiopians recite the Bible daily.
Yeah. There's something there, and now there's multiple ways you could interpret that. It could be there are questions arising. Well, why is there Ethiopic here in the Quran, and they needed a backstory? So that could be one, or it could be that the person behind the production of the Quran had some connection with Quran, with Ethiopia and Yemen. And the other thing is the Sabaic script, which was used in southern Arabia, in Yemen, is very similar to the Ethiopic script.
Correct.
And it was used from the 6th century BC to the 6th century AD. Now, what I've heard, I would have thought it would have been ideal to write the Quran in, but what I've heard is it doesn't support all the sounds of Arabic. So
no, the Ethiopic does. I will actually bring that up.
Yeah,
but
it does. Okay.
It does. It's all of the sounds in Arabic are within the Ethiopic language, and so also the Ethiopic language is the oldest language that remains unchanged since its founding. Now, notice here, Ethiopic is number. So this is a 1938 survey. Okay, this is 1938. So this survey has not been updated. Right, this survey does need to be updated. However, right. There are over 2,000 foreign words in the Quran, with 55 languages represented in the Quran, according to Arthur Jeffrey. And Syriac is number 1, apparently, then Aramaic, then Hebrew, then Greek, then Ethiopic, plus Amharic, which puts this number over 200. And this was at the time. Now we know there are even more words in Ethiopic.
Mm.
Okay, I will bring up another reference. But what do you thought?
I would say with best if we go just to the top of that for a
Yeah,
second.
so over 2,000 words known then with 55 languages. I mean, including this one, you just got to wonder, like, what? Yeah,
Norse.
you just have to, like, huh?
Huh.
Sorry, yeah?
Yeah, actually, something on that. I'll mention the Norse one in a second, but Syriac is otherwise known as Syro-Aramaic. So you could essentially take those two categories and put them together. They're just slightly different versions of
Yeah.
Aramaic. So if you add those together, you're talking what 33% thereabouts. That's one. So one third of all of the foreign words come from Aramaic, which is not surprising because Aramaic was the lingua franca of much of the Silk Route, much of the Middle East at that time. So that would not be surprising. Are there other words like Pahlavi in Persian, like all of those? You know, if you were to do a map where all these words are coming from, that kind of paints a very strong picture of way up north, with the exception of the Ethiopic.
Yeah.
So yeah,
If I can mention, bringing this up now, a couple of things. So Ethiopian is the oldest language in that it has departed the least from its original Proto-Semitic. It's not the oldest language, but it has,
yeah,
okay. So this is from John
it's
Harrington,
most stable.
Smithsonian, right?
Yeah,
And let's have a look here. Also, there's some new evidence coming out now. There's some very interesting evidence that Ethiopia is the oldest Christian nation, right? But notice the word
I
kitab
believe it. Yeah.
is Ethiopic. It's not Arabic.
Mm-hmm.
Mahram,
No, nice.
okay, is Ethiopic. It is not Arabic. Minbar, Muslim, Ethiopic. Okay?
Wow.
Shaitan is Ethiopic. So these words are all Ethiopic, and these are the ones that are known. These are the words that went into the Quran, taken from the Ethiopic. Notice, oddly enough, even the word wine of sacrament, vein,
Yeah.
Ethiopic.
Actually, you notice that the words that they are using are the religious words,
Yes.
if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, because the first hijrah was to Ethiopia, and Muhammad's followers stayed there for 15 years. And the Ethiopic, because of the isolation, they have a very strong Jewish bent to their Christian doctrine.
Yeah.
And for instance, separating men and women, covering their hair, all of these, probably leaving the shoes outside. And then if you go to the comparative dictionary of Ge'ez, okay, I need to find this reference. But the word Tawheed is Ethiopic.
Yeah, definitely.
I just want to find the reference to this, because I had someone give me a very long speech about it on a comment on a video, and they were like, "Well, Lloyd, what are these Arabic words?" And I was like, "How do you know those Arabic words?" But and they were like, blah 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 blah, and I'm like, okay, so
yeah.
But I mean, I'm just assuming that the author of this book was lying then, because the other guy obviously knows better. But so I just have to assume that any random internet commenter always knows best. Great. Hold on. You know what? I'm going to find this on my channel, and then I will. But yeah, so let's go to the next question. These two, 7 and 8. Your thoughts?
What advice would you give to someone who's interested in exploring the history of Islam, and how have you seen polemics change in recent years? Where might things? Okay, maybe I'll start with question 8 first. So the way I've often depicted it, the polemics that are typically done is tier 1 and tier 2. Tier 1 is the sort of polemics that someone like David Woods would typically do, which he does really well, which is to take the Islamic story as it is and then just run it through and see what the absurdum, how would you say it? I can't remember the term. Reductio absurdum. You basically follow it through to its absurd conclusions, or you just point out the contradictions that are there in the stories, or the immorality, and that's fine. That's very dramatic. It is very watchable, very entertaining. Whereas the tier 2 is basically to ask the question, well, did it really happen? For me, I find that a much more meaningful question, whereas, you know, the stories in themselves are a scandal. All, you know, in the Hadiths and Sirah and so on, there's so many scandalous things in the stories. But some Muslims are not affected by that at all. They say, well, so what? You know, he married a 6-year-old or whatever. But a deeper question, well, did it ever actually happen?
Right.
I find that a much more satisfying question. I think that's where it's heading. And I'm really happy that people like yourself, myself, Jay, and others have contributed towards that movement. The other thing I would say that in terms of changes is the academics, believe it or not, are watching our channels, which is crazy.
How do you know this?
I know this. I know there's a certain. I better not name names, but there's someone who is very high up that has basically informed one of the team that he has watched a lot of our videos and is basically cheering us on from the sidelines.
Yeah, you know, I've said before that these academics, when I go through, when I use my indexing software to go through and find common links between all of these books, these thousands of books I've collected, it's like in many cases, I've said this on my channel several times, it's like the scholar has all the facts and refuses to draw a conclusion. Right? Yeah. He has gone all the way except join the dots, right? Right at the very end. Or there's so much knowledge in verticals, but they refuse to connect them across. It's like a deliberate decision to look the other way. And this word Sahaba, notice that's also Ethiopic. I mean, you know, so you start to find, I need to find this other term.
Actually, just on the Sahaba, what meaning did it give?
Something completely different.
Oh my God. So they've just basically said, oh, we'll have that word. Thank you very much.
I'll just get that for you.
Sorry, no, I shouldn't.
Well, let me now I'm gonna have to find it.
Oh, sorry, man. Oh, it's okay.
Sahaba, there's a couple of meanings of it. This one
okay. To draw, pull, drag along, lead.
Summon demons.
Summon. Oh, that's not a good association.
Oh my God.
Oh. Actually, you could actually argue the Sahaba is to do with exorcism there. Could it? Could draw out.
To draw out, yeah. To draw, yeah.
Yeah. That's not a very good association. Yeah.
So there's another one. There's a different one, but
actually, do you know what I see there? You see where it says be attracted together, used in magical formulas. Now, one of the interesting things about the targum, right? I don't know if you know this. So I'm going to share something that you may not have heard before. Let me just get the index here, right? So, in the targum, and she's analyzed. As back to Mortensen, she's analyzed all the different priestly things. And one area this come up is esoteric knowledge. What makes the priest special? And she has a whole section on magic. Heroes, temple objects, creation, affecting action, detection, tools of magic, and so forth. The rods, throne of glory, the cloud of glory, the ark, manna, the well, book of life. Notice the well is connected, and the idea is that there's 3 stories to do with wells, and if I can remember, Isaac, Jacob, and who is the other person? Is a female figure in the Bible, and essentially, as the well. Our miraculous water from the well is given in the Bible to prove that someone is from God or has got God's approval. And of course, the Zamzam well is clearly in the same vein. So I think the Zamzam well is basically there to prove that Muhammad was a prophet of God. You know, so
there's reference to a well. I also could discover references to a well. Here we got this Todo. So in the Ethiopic, they use the term, they pronounce it as Toedo. So there's Tawhid or Tawhid, and Toedo. And they say Toedo. There's a couple of references in this book. I've just come to this one. To be united, to become one. It's a reference to the Godhead. It's a reference to the, to the Trinity.
How can Allah be united? If Allah is just one being, how can he be united or become one? That doesn't, that's one of the problems with this borrowing.
To be united with each other, to be one, but to be united. Yeah. The references go on. It goes on to a second page. So hold on, I'll show you this reference here.
That book is really valuable. That one on Ethiopia.
Tawhedo Gez, okay, modern pronunciation, Toedo, is a Gez word meaning being made one or unified. It is cognate Tawhid with monotheism. Now there was some smarty pants that was like, well, Lloyd, where you're getting your information, because in my opinion, blah blah blah. I'm like, okay, I'm just
Yeah,
assuming all the authors I'm reading are lying, but that's fine, thank you. If you can just send me a link to your fancy book on the subject. And then it
yeah,
says here, these are additional references: to be united, to become one, to be united with each other, to unite, to declare to be one.
yeah.
Uh,
I think they've taken the meaning to declare to be one, and that's where they're drawing it. But the problem is there's an assumption of separate parts being
yeah.
joined when you say be united, become one, and that obviously you can't go to. You have to be careful in terms of the theology of the Trinity, because the Trinity is not parts but persons, but essentially it makes sense in the context of the Trinity, but it doesn't in
Yeah.
a
Well, remember, Allah is
monad
Ahad,
idea
which
of
is
God.
Echad, which is a complex unity. He's not Wahid.
Yeah,
So there are
yeah,
problems
yeah,
here. So this is what I just thought that might be interesting to people that, you know.
yeah. This is great stuff, man.
And then,
Um,
yeah, how do you think this will transform apologetics, Christian and Islamic apologetics? I mean, because I think at the
it,
moment they have no answer to us. They refuse to engage with me.
they
They
don't.
refuse to
Yeah,
engage.
yeah.
And how? Yeah.
Do you know that do you know what is fantastic about this whole thing? This is why I'm really excited about it. Number one is they have no response, so it's like an atomic bomb to them. They have no way of responding. The second thing is the YouTube censors love our material. I haven't had any problems with my videos in about 2 years. Once I moved away from the tier one form of polemics, moved to this, it's just pure dry history. There's nothing in it that's offensive. It's literally you were just recounting history. That's all it is. There's not, we're not being sensational. We're just telling it as it is. Um, there's nothing you can say is hateful or anything. So it's very powerful on many fronts, and it's not aggressive in any way. So like a Muslim could, in good faith, watch our videos and not feel offended in any way. All we're doing is asking rational questions that maybe they're not willing to ask themselves, but at least they're not offensive in themselves. We're just asking more radical
I mean,
questions.
they're
That's it.
definitely not willing to. I mean, if I go to
And there's a reason why they're not willing to ask questions, which I know you know.
yeah, I've shown you this
But
before, and I thought that maybe for the audience, this is from the book Creating the Quran, Stephen Shoemaker,
yeah,
Historical
it's a
Critical Study,
fantastic book. Yeah,
right? And I'm going to bring up the Kathisma, right? And this answers the question of Mary being called the sister of Aaron, and also the Islamic narrative of the trees bending down to give her food and
yeah.
the
I have something
water
on that
coming
to
from
say,
the
but I'll say
rock.
it after you. Yeah, yeah,
This comes from the 4th century from the Kathisma Church, which was just outside Jerusalem. I've shown my audience this in previous videos that the ruins of the church still are there. But this actually the Muslims plagiarized when they got to Arabia in the 8th century or whatever. When they conquered Jerusalem, they incorporated this. And he states bluntly in this book, the Quran was a developing document that took hundreds of years, and they incorporated numerous traditions.
yeah. There's something that I discovered recently. Well, not or discovered other scholars had mentioned, which is the idea of Semitic parallels, which is what seems to be contradiction. So, for example, in the Quran, it seems to suggest that Mary, mother of Jesus, is a sister of Aaron, and that's a contradiction. But in Semitic Semitic symmetry, where there's parallels, they draw two separate figures together to make a point, which the point being the focus on the priesthood. So you have sister of Aaron, there's obviously a priestly dimension to it. Now, the idea of Mary being the mother of Jesus, by bringing her in association with the sister of Aaron, it's suggesting a priestly role. So the idea of Mary visiting the temple, that suggests a kind of like a priestly role as well. So there are things like that. I think a lot of the passages which cause confusion are usually because of this Semitic symmetry. And this is one of the reasons why the tier one polemic is actually not a great method, because actually, rather than mocking what seems to be a mistake in the Quran, it's actually much more fruitful to actually say, well, they must have meant something. We've obviously misunderstood what they really meant originally. The other one that is often quoted, and unfortunately, I don't have the passage in front of me, but you know the verse in the Quran where where Jesus is said to say, "Are myself and my mother gods with you?" You know that one?
Not offend. If
I
maybe
think
somebody in the audience can do it, then we
it's
can look it up.
yeah. It's basically it's the idea that the Quran seems to think that that the Trinity is made up of Mary, Jesus, and the Father.
Yes.
Um, but actually, if you know the Aramaic culture, the Holy Spirit is referred to as a mother, and it actually makes sense. Even when Jesus says, "You must be born again of the Spirit," so born of the Spirit is implying that the Holy Spirit is female or feminine. That was how Aramaic speakers view the Holy Spirit. It's only under the Latin Church that we've kind of moved away from that towards kind of seeing the Holy Spirit as a masculine figure. Um, and so when you look at the formula, Jesus or Mary, the mother of Jesus, if you no, sorry, let me see. No, when you see in the ayah, it says Jesus, son of Mary. If you just get rid of son of Mary for a moment and just put Jesus Christ and then read the passage, you can't assume that the mother is automatically referring to Mary in that context. But there's a deeper level. Is what they've done is they've drawn two things together and brought them in close proximity. So they've taken the idea of Mary from the Gospels. They've taken the idea of the Holy Spirit as a mother and brought them together. And it makes kind of sense in the context of looking at Jesus as human and divine. So you have the Jesus, the son of Mary. So that's the human part, but also the son of the Holy Spirit in the sense of the Spirit as being a mother. So that's the Semitic symmetry. I think that's going to reveal a lot of other passages in the Quran that are causing confusion. This comes from Galais, a French scholar. Edward Marie Galais is the person who had pointed that out.
Yeah, there's as you're probably aware, there's a lot of Gnostic overlap. I've done a series on that, and I will be doing. I finished a number of other presentations on it, and I'll be doing an intensely
Yeah.
deep dive on Gnosticism, and because all of the Christology in the Quran is Gnostic or heretical. None of it's orthodox.
Yeah.
I mean, all of it. It's like Allah only knew about Arius. Allah only knew about Gnostics and heretics. It's like, you'd think that Allah would know what's in the Bible because Allah wrote it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, here's the thing. We already mentioned about the demonic element earlier on. Well, the demons would obviously promote the heresy and not the authentic stuff every time. So that's
yeah,
if a person were to be possessed, the first thing the demon would likely do is to try and teach them the wrong beliefs about their faith to send them astray. So it's no surprise that the Islam has basically twisted and taken the worst sources for everything. That makes perfect sense, on a spiritual level.
yeah. No, because Stadius told me my second stream on Gnosticism, where I'm showing all of the Gnostic parallels with Islam. And in some cases, I mean, these are just outright plagiarism, and you're showing the historical roots. And he says this has now been his most popular, his most watched live stream on his channel, and people are starting to respond to it. And many people commented very positively, stating that, look, man, this clinches it. So Islam starts off as paganism, and then it adopts this, it decretes this Gnostic layer, the pseudo-biblical layer.
Yeah, I'm beginning to see the Quran as a kind of a targum, like the pseudo Jonathan, and the idea is that it was put together in anticipation of the rebuilding of the temple, but instead of it being for the Jews, it was meant as like the sons of Ishmael, and so rather than going down a purely Orthodox Jewish line, they've gone for this other material. Now, the thing is, when you look at the Mishnahs, the Mishnahs and the Targums are very willing to go into other folklore and various sources that you wouldn't think they would go to. You'd imagine they would be sticking strictly to just solidly biblical stuff. But so this kind of they've taken the Jewish methodology and they've gone one step further, and it's become, as you say, this Gnostic stuff.
Yeah, and they've taken also a lot of folk tales and things, and I mean, but they've got like from the Gospel of the infancy Gospel of Thomas. I mean, they've taken so much material, and then from Manichaeism, they've taken so much material, and then of course the very earliest heresy that organized Gnostic heresy is called the Book of Al-Kasai, and they've taken directly from that group, and this is late first, early second century, and the parallels are scary because the ideas within the Al-Kasai transmute through the ages. These ideas remain consistent. I mean, there are changes, but certain ideas remain consistent. They go into the Ebionites. The Ebionites have overlap with the Essenes. The Essenes become the Manichaeans. The Manichaeans become the Sabians. And then the Sabians, and of course, within the Islamic traditions, within the Hadith, Muhammad is called a Sabian. He is literally called a Sabian.
Yeah.
And the Sabians are Gnostic Jews, basically, Messianic Gnostic Jews. And they are completely heretical. They're considered a heretical sect. They're written about by Epiphanius. They're written about by all of the early church fathers. And so all of them, they are, and I mean, all of these groups share certain ideas. And then eventually Islam is formed based on the same ideas. And Muhammad is in that line of these, I don't know if you've seen that. Muhammad is a Sabi. Have you seen that before?
I have, yeah. I remember you mentioned it. I'm actually, while you were
want to share something?
There was something I was trying to remember. I can't remember the exact. Let me see if I can find
anything
it
from the audience. You guys have other questions? I know I don't know if I have mentioned, if I've listened or seen all the comments and questions, but if there's anything from the audience.
I'm going to say it's. I think it's Mar. I stand corrected. I may have remembered the name, the Caliph, wrong, but I think it's Marwan II was the last Umayyad Caliph. Where did he build his temple? Or not his temple, his palace. It was on the site of an old ruined temple of Sen in Haran. So that was the very last place before the Abbasids took over. I think this feeds in with everything that you said. Why would they have picked Haran of all places?
Well,
I think
so actually, on the work that I've done, Haran features because it's linked to Yemen. But let me go have a look at that. When we go to Haran, here, so according to some work that I've done, okay, this is Haran, okay? So the Muslims eventually invade this area. They take over. Now, this was a temple of magic dedicated to sin, right? It was a temple of occultic magic, Gnostic magic. Then the Sufis supposedly take this material with them to Spain. Now, these guys claim that they are the inheritors of the original Egyptian mystery religion, of the, what do they call it, Hermes Trismegistus, of his secrets. And the Sufis claim that they have inherited these secrets. And if you go to, so they claim that they took that stuff to Spain. Now, if you go to, if we go to the encyclopedia of, actually not here, go home. If we go to the Encyclopedia of Islam, which is the gold standard of academic study in Islam, and if you look up the word magic, about 40% of the Encyclopedia of Islam seems to, at least as far as I can tell, deals with magic. So many of these Muslim words deal with magic. Yeah. And religious terms constantly overlap with magic, like azima. And in fact, right, so magical operations, magic, occultic magic. In magic, okay, the use of formulas constantly. And if we have a look at the word, let's bring up the word ahruf, like harf, okay, the plural is ahruf, so harf is the word, plural is ahruf, letter of the alphabet, word, a Quranic reading, a dialect. That is true. However, when you go look at these references in the encyclopedia, it gives you like a paragraph, like a few sentences. But when you go to the main meaning of ahruf, right, just read that for me, Mel. This is the main meaning. It's a couple of pages long.
Okay.
Onomatomancy.
I can't pronounce. Oh, that's a hard one. A magical practice based on the occult properties of the letters of the alphabet and of the divine and angelic names which they form. Wow. So does this suggest that they are producing different versions of the Quran for magical reasons.
Yes.
Would that be how you could interpret it?
So hold on, let me go to volume 3 here so we can look this up. 595b.
I should say in passing, this has been a lot of fun. Thanks for inviting
Well,
me
thank
on,
you.
Lord.
Yeah, you got to let me know when to stop because we don't.
No, I'm having a great time here. This is good. Hope the audience are too.
Yeah, the audience has grown actually. So let's go ahead here because now remember Yasser Qadi, like we don't know what akhruf are. You know, it's really hard for us to figure this out because you know we just can't seem to understand. But let's have a quick look here. This is the Encyclopedia of Islam, and it's written by Muslim scholars as well. And I mean, they are apologists, so they will let's just say will fudge with the facts a little bit. The huruf, the akhruf, okay, the science of letters, onomatomancy, in the strict sense, magical practice. Give it, okay, there's the name Samia, known as white magic, but you'll notice that white magic is also black magic. Don't worry, it's the same thing. Yeah. Based on the occult.
Actually, do you notice they call it the science of letters, but really it's the magic of letters. That's
yes. And it's basically, so you have arithmomancy and gematria. Muslims have their own version of gematria and their own Kabbalah. And it's based on alchemy. And Samia, we would consider, think of this as NLP. Think of this as their version of NLP. It's conversational hypnosis. Think of it as conversation. Yeah. Think of it as baffling people with BS. Yeah. Okay? So this is, think of this as more as NLP back in the day, right? Then the 28 letters of the Arabic alphabet are divided into
neurolinguistic programming.
Neurolinguistic programming. Yeah, it's basically conversational hypnosis. It is sophistic. Thank you very much, Sheikh. Thank you very much, Sheikh Bayadi. So it's based on sophistic, just to waffle and bamboozle people. Okay, very sophisticated actually. But the 28 letters of the Arabic alphabet are divided into 4 categories. You read this, Mal. You can do this. Just read this for me.
Okay, so the 28 letters of the Arabic alphabet are divided into 4 categories, each of 7 letters corresponding to the 4 basic elements. We give here the classification favored in the East, with the Western variants fire, which is west.
Just the highlights should be fine without having to.
Yeah, okay, sorry. Fire, air, water, earth. The fire letters, the air letters, the water letters, and 4th, the earth letters.
And then, of course, you have the lunar and solar letters. Now, why would they have such attachment to lunar and solar? And then if we skip down, they speak of the huruf. Now, this goes on at length to discuss the huruf, whereas the other definitions are very short. Combining the letters to obtain a whole possessing particular magical properties for divination or magical effect, and an esoteric character is attached.
Yeah, this is, this is one of the things I think we need to be careful whenever we're even reading the Quran, that we don't realize that, if this has been concocted with a magical purpose, you're actually helping further their demonic aims, in creating these formulas. This is not just idle talk here. This has got an evil.
So read this one to understand. So check that.
Yeah. To understand the mystery of numbers is to penetrate that of the divine intelligence. To understand the mystery of huruf is to penetrate that of the Holy Spirit.
It's occultic practice. Wow. It's to put yourself into altered states of mind, to enter, to basically commune. It's what the Gnostics believed. You would commune. You leave your body. You commune with Allah directly. Theurgical factors. Theurgical. I mean, so we should look up what theurgical means. I can never remember what that darn word means. I always forget, but it's
can't remember himself.
Theurgy was an imitation of the gods, and as ritualized cosmogony, endowed in body souls with the divine responsibility of creating and preserving the cosmos. So this would be your basic Gnosticism.
Yeah.
Compelling or persuading a god of beneficent or supernatural power to do something for you, or to refrain from doing something. Now,
basic magic, essentially.
Yeah, and I should mention, this is Gnostic, in that the Gnostics believed if they could find the secret name of the eons, of the gods, they could then be saved from the corrupt world of matter and be given a place in the world of spirit far away from the world of matter. Now, of course, Muslims, these are Muslim scholars that practice the very same practices, right? And the odd thing is that when they speak of the names of Allah, the 99 names, those are not names. Those are not his names. Those are qualities, like the cold, That's not a name. The warm, the freezing, the loving, the funny, right? Allah has only one name, a secret name. You don't know that name. I don't know that name. The scholars know the name. You don't. So, and this is not something that but this is using that. Now, if you know the secret name, you can compel the demon or the god or the deity to do your bidding, or to not do their bidding. So this, now the Encyclopedia of Islam is full of this stuff. Your thoughts for
this? So I suppose the what's the word? On the spiritual level, the danger of all of this stuff is by reciting these with this purpose, you're enthroning the demons even, and so therefore this is not good stuff. And I believe there is an epidemic of possessions going on in the Islamic world. In Egypt, for example, they frequently go to the Coptic priests to get exorcisms. And it's no wonder when they're doing this. I stayed in an Airbnb at a Muslim family, and they had the evil eye on the door. And so, it's all there. It's been done everywhere. They may not necessarily understand what it is that they're up to, but...
Yeah. No, so I mean, you notice there are so many references in the Encyclopedia of Islam to magic. Now they mention here, like for instance, they'll speak of Waraqa's confirmation of the authenticity of Muhammad's first revelation. That's nice. And then in magic, the very same word, now the word they're speaking of is namus. And in magic, the very same word is used for magical formulae, particularly those which are based on illusions of the senses. Illusions of the senses. So this word reveals to Waraqa's confirmation of the authenticity. I mean, and then it's juxtaposed with a magical formula based on illusion. Tricking someone.
Do you know? Yeah. I wonder, was the word Waraka, does it appear in the Ethiopic dictionary by any chance?
Waraka. I can look it up. I mean, but it definitely has a previous Yemeni connotation. His family name has a previous Yemeni connotation.
Yeah. There's something about that name that's kind of...
I do cover it briefly in monotheism, but let's have a look if I can find Wara.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see if we can find it. Actually, let me go through. This is going to be faster.
Oh, yeah.
And what's the name of the book? File name.
That system you've got is phenomenal.
So let's have a look through. This is going to be quicker. It's I mean, I pay for this to index all of this nonsense.
Yeah.
It's building the index right now, so it's going to try and start finding it.
Yeah. Okay. Like, it's interesting. To be blind is coming up with Wara.
Yeah, we'd have to, Warana, threshing floor.
Yeah. Interesting that Muhammad doesn't understand what's happening originally, and then his wife, according to the myth, his wife enlightens him about what's happening. And it kind of just strikes me, it reminds me of the 3 days of blindness with Paul. And he sees the light, but I don't know if there's any connection but beyond that, but it just strikes me as like a parallel.
Yeah, no, there's Waraka. Hold on. We just had a first reference. Waraka, rak, spittle. Okay, so I don't know if this is really relevant.
Okay. Yeah.
So that was...
Oh, it says see. Yes, it says... I think it will show up because it says see
Rakat.
Waraka.
Okay, see Waraka. Okay, there is a reference to...
Yeah.
So let's have a look.
Yeah, it's going to be there. It's... If it turns out it's an Ethiopic word, it certainly is. It just goes to prove everything that you've been saying.
Look, these scholarly mention that the whole thing has been overlooked. That there is a significant influence, but it's been overlooked in favor of things that happened later, not things that happened sooner.
So, So, is your argument with the Ethiopic and Yemen influence, is it that you're saying that this influence was there from centuries before the 7th century, or contemporary with the 7th
prior
century,
to? So you have to go back about 1000 BC up until about 500 AD, roughly-ish, 4th century, 5th century. And then the Gnostics rock up in the 3rd century, 4th century, and then... Wara.
No, that makes sense because so there's no real contradiction
No,
between the
no,
northern
no. It
narrative
just adds it
or
adds an
this because
earlier
it's just
portion.
yeah because I kind of view the Persian element is a later
No,
one,
it joins the
so
two.
it'd
It
be
actually marries the two
exactly
because what you
yeah
find is there was intense trade. Okay, so there was intense trade between this region and Yemen. There was intense
yeah
trade connections
yeah
between these
yeah
regions. There was barely any separation. And also the whole
yeah
of here, this section here, right? According to one scholar at least. So these guys believed in the question that's left open there is, did the worship of sin come south, or did it originally come from the south through Oman and then go north? Because the story is that the Omanis may have been the original settlers of Iraq. So basically, these guys worshipped sin. Their religion influenced these guys. These guys went north. They settled here, and then they came back.
yeah
So the question is, did that whole religion start here in Yemen? And in the Islamic literature, they speak of our religion is from Yemen. It quite literally says so in several hadith. Our religion is the
yeah
Yemenite. Our religion is Yemeni. Our faith is Yemeni. Our creed is Yemeni.
yeah
It says so several times. So, and why is this ignored? So waraka,
yeah
to spit.
right okay
I don't know if
spit
that has some sort
holding
of magical significance, like Jesus spat on the blind
yeah
man's eyes, etc.
well yeah you see it's like I'm going to use sacramental. So when Jesus spits and then he puts it on the blind person's eyes, it's been used as sacramental. But then you have the magical use of spit
Now, let me see if there's anything else
as
here.
well.
Waraka, spit from the ge'ez, spittle.
It's a strange
Marak to
name for
bless.
an occult
Marak to
Muhammad.
bless is used. Okay, it comes from the root mark, to bless. Maraka, meraka. Notice how the word changes it to miraka. So you see, the word waraka doesn't necessarily mean it stays the same. The words change, the roots
Yeah,
change. This comes from the practice of spitting with the purpose
yeah.
of blessing.
Okay, so it could actually. So could you potentially translate it as so waraka meaning for a person's name could it be equivalent to blessing, a blessing?
Possibly.
I've just met someone called because I just met. It's funny by coincidence I met someone today whose first name was Blessing.
Yes, I know black
I'm
people who are
thinking,
called
well,
that. That's not an uncommon name.
yeah,
Gaduza, confirm that in the
yeah,
chat.
yeah. Actually, the person was from somewhere in Africa. Actually, as it happens, so it's just it could be that Waraka is actually referring to someone from Ethiopia, perhaps.
Yeah. That
Yeah.
that
So
is a real possibility.
yeah,
So
that's because that changes everything. Then we're talking about well, where did all this happen? So that would suggest that this figure in the Quran whose bits of myths and stories have come out about. Maybe he has some connection with Ethiopia originally or
no,
Yemen.
there's definitely a
I think
strong
you're
connection with both
yeah
Ethiopia and Yemen. Of that, I'm convinced. The evidence is far too strong. I mean, we're talking, it's literally carved in rock.
yeah
And the
yeah
first mentions of Muhammad is by a Christian referring to God.
yeah
And the Arabs then copy this. I mean, like, it's just.
yeah yeah. So actually, just maybe I could
Sure, sure, sure.
share.
Let me take my share
Like
away. Yeah, I will remove mine.
so
You're up.
I
Yes.
have okay. Let me just see if I can remember how to do
I'm
it
glad
now.
this works. I had to, it was a bit of a fight to. You've got
Yeah.
something on the screen that's blocking the top right corner of the screen. I don't know if there's something you need to click or something that's causing a blockage on the top right.
Mm,
There's some sort of window, like
sure.
a window that's causing an obstruction.
Let me see if I can.
I don't know if it's actually
If I
showing
get
up.
rid
Yes,
of
it's showing
some.
up on the YouTube stream as well. The top right. Just look on the YouTube stream. There's a bit of a square on the top right corner for some reason. A gray square.
I don't know what. Yeah, I don't. I can't.
Okay.
I can't see it on my end. So I don't know.
Yeah, something's causing it.
Yeah. Let me see if I try sharing it. Let me just see.
It's fine.
if it'll
I'm
work.
sure we can see enough of it to.
Good. Okay. Let me see. Okay. So I'm sharing. Right. So what I wanted to share with you is the way Muhammad was presented in art over the centuries. So I don't know
Seeing it. Yeah.
if I can just. Yeah. So what I might do, just because you've given evidence where, first of all, Muhammad is has been used prior to Islam as a divine being, so reference to God. So if we look at Islamic art, Muhammad is depicted as a human being first, but over the centuries, he becomes more and more divine. But what if we're just seeing it going a full circle? So it starts off as a divine person, becomes humanized, and then returns to being viewed as a human, to be a divine being again. And maybe it's the Gnostic element that's kind of emerging. But let me just very quickly just show you. So can you
Yeah,
see
yeah.
this one? So if you can see, this is 1000 AD. So Muhammad is depicted kind of like a saint with a halo, nothing particularly divine. But if we just move a little bit further in time, so this is the 14th century, you can see that you have camels bound to him and you have an angel over his head and so forth. This is the young
Pouring oil on
Muhammad
his
and
head,
so
yeah.
forth.
Anointing him.
And now we have this famous image that caused a bit of controversy there recently, similar period. Okay, nothing exceptional there. Now we're into, well, the Miraj is sort of implying some sort of divine
Yeah,
being,
do
but
you know
not
that the
quite.
Burak is
We go
first
on this.
associated with Abraham, and it happens at least 100 years after the death of Muhammad in a poem? It's reference to Abraham, to explain how Abraham traveled between Jerusalem and Mecca and back in a day.
This sounds like what do they call it? A Deus ex machina. You know when you try and make a plot in a
Yep.
movie or a book fit, and you just
Yeah.
drop.
And it's
So
it's
having a
it's
flying
literally
horse
plagiarized from
that fits.
poetry. In fact, it's taken from
Yeah,
Jewish mythology, but it's from poetry, and then eventually it just becomes part of the Quran.
yeah. So you can see here now you have Muhammad depicted with
Flaming, yeah. I've got
flaming
another. You're right.
light.
There's a different one that I've used where his whole body is covered in flame, and then everyone else only has their
See
heads
there?
covered. And
Yeah,
if you go into the Sirah, Muhammad is made literally from the essence, from the same essence as Allah. And then what happens is Allah takes pieces
yeah,
of Muhammad and puts his essence into Adam, Abraham, Moses, Noah, David, and Jesus. And their light is the light of Muhammad. And in
yeah,
fact, Muhammad's light is the light of the throne of Allah, called the Arsh, known as the
yeah,
Arsh. So the Arsh of Allah is, and then
yeah,
of course the throne room is lit by Muhammad's light. The earth is
yeah,
lit by Muhammad's light. The light of the world is Muhammad's light. You just moved
yeah.
that thing, whatever that square was. You just moved it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, whatever it did,
Just
it might
click,
have
just
been.
click,
I don't
just
know. It
we
might
are
have
click
been
and
the.
drag downwards. Just click and
Yeah.
drag down.
Is that better?
Yes, it's gone.
There.
Excellent.
Oh, okay.
Whatever
Oh,
it is, and then
great.
also, but the thing is that Muhammad's light is the light of everything. Literally, his light is the sunlight, right? Except, we must say that there's a distinction in Arabic between sunlight and moonlight. The moonlight is the nur, the sunlight's the diya. And in every reference to Allah and to Muhammad, they are moonlight.
Yeah. So it's going back to the god Sen, who's the moon god.
And in fact, have you seen all the
Yeah.
references
So I
to
think.
Monday in Muhammad's life? He was born on a Monday, died on a Monday. He had revelation on Mondays. He went up to heaven on Monday. He went, the hijrah happened on a Monday. And
Yeah.
all of the links to, and
Right.
when he had revelation, there's almost 11 references specifically to why Monday is a holy day in Islam. All the critical events, literally
Right.
every critical
Okay.
event in Muhammad's life happened on Moon Day, the day of the moon.
All right. Okay. Now that's
I'll show it to
making a
you.
lot of sense.
Once you're done there, I'll show you the
Yeah.
reference.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've just unshared that. I hope that's come off for you. Yeah.
So
this, I think this has been a really productive stream today. We're kind of making
it's like
a
the
lot
conversation
of
we
connections
had
there. It's
2
kind
weeks ago. It's got
It is, yeah. But I think even on another level.
Yeah,
like,
let
'cause
me
we're
show you
here
this
now,
now, because
even
this is
other
actually
bits of it.
fascinating. Because I mean, people can see real time the collaboration and the overlap between our work. So let me just see if I missed anything.
Yeah.
So no, let's skip this for now. So Monday is the day of the moon god. So the gates of paradise are flown open on Monday and Thursday, right? Monday is given incredible importance in Islam, right? It is only right that we give it equal importance on earth. Now, we didn't know this until now. So let's have a look. Abu Qatada al-Ansari, whatever, said that Allah's messenger was asked about fasting on Monday. It's the day when I was born, and the day when revelation was sent to me. So he got his revelations on Mondays, right? Sahih Muslim, or Da'if Muslim, sorry. So I'm going to skip some of this, okay? Muslims are encouraged to fast on Mondays because Muhammad fasted on Mondays. The black stone was placed in the Kaaba on a Monday. The Miraj was on a Monday, right? So let's have a look at this article. I'm going to bring up this article.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, it's the day dedicated to Sen.
Monday, of course, the moon day,
Monday.
Right? So Allah created trees on a Monday. Now this is significant because the trees are the thing that God said to Abraham not to worship, the trees, right? So for some reason, the very first mentions the trees, and in the Kaaba, according to the Islamic sources, trees used to be painted inside the Kaaba. There was a picture of Mary, there was a picture of Jesus, right? The gates of paradise are flung open on Monday. Muslims are forgiven on Monday, right? Deeds are presented to Allah on Monday, right? Let me see. The Prophet was born on Monday. He raised the black stone to the Kaaba on Monday. This is the day of the moon. He saw revelation on a Monday. Let's see what else. Oh yes, the incident in the cave happened on a Monday when he got revelation. That happened on a Monday. Cave of Hira. The ascension, the Miraj, took place on a Monday. The Prophet, his hijrah began on a Monday. The Prophet arrived in Medina on a Monday, and the Prophet passed away on a Monday, the day of the moon. And so this is all Mondays. And then, interestingly, connected to that, read this, Mel.
I was about to put a comment in the chat. Sorry, so I'll have to come back.
Okay, no, I'll wait for you.
Just 1 second. Yeah. Now I can only see.
So just read this.
A blank screen. I'm not seeing anything you've shared just yet. I was just about to say, just while you're loading it up, is that in French Monday is lundi.
Yeah, lunatic.
Lun. Yeah. So it's and I'm sure in other languages the Monday is named after lunar or
it's the moon. Yeah, it's the day of the moon. It's the day of the moon god.
Yeah. So maybe those who are watching, if in your language Monday it has got a connection to the moon, just put in what it is in your language.
So just check the slide that I'm sharing. I don't know if I'm sharing my screen. I will share it with you again if I am not, Mel. Let me share my screen.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything.
Okay, I'm sharing it now.
Yeah, I'm not.
It's on YouTube. It's because I have a very low latency to YouTube. So have a look. I'm sharing it now.
Yeah, let me just. Oh, I see. Okay, now I see it. 1 second. All right, let me go back. Sorry. Right. Okay. Lord of Monday and the Moon. So, Al-Bayad, Jane King of Monday, Wura the White One, Father of the Light, Abu al-Nur, Amara, the White King,
the Malik,
Malik al-Abyad is Lord of Monday, the Moon.
Kumar. That's the whole moon.
Okay. Yeah, it is reported from Atta that Ibn Abbas said a devil called Al-Abyad came to the Prophet in the form of Jibril and cast these words, i.e. the Satanic Verses upon him. The Prophet recited them.
Now, Kumar is the name of a pagan moon god. Okay? And this is one of the gods that the tribe, the Quraysh, worshipped. The White King is Sin. Sin is the White King. Sin is, of course, Mecca in Yemeni, obviously in Yemen, and then eventually the rest of Arabia. He was known as the White King, the White God, the White One, the Father of Light. That was one of the appellations of Al-Makkah, of Sin, right? The White One, the Father of the Light. And of course, he's the one who spoke these words as Jibril. Now, who's to say he wasn't in the cave of Hira?
Yeah. Tim, wasn't there a white Kaaba? Am I mistaken? I thought I heard Christian Prince say that there's a black Kaaba, but there's also
I've mentioned,
a white Kaaba.
That's a very weird thing, But this is a demon, of course. So the jinn king. But Al-Abyad, Al-Harith, and then of course the White King, the Malik. Now notice the Malik is the Moloch, the Moloch, and of course it's from the Jewish word, a combination of the words Boshet and Melech, which means the shameful one, or the shameful one, basically the powerful, shameful king.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, I have to wrap up. Is there anything you'd like to add? Because I, for personal reasons, I have to wrap up. But anything you'd like to, or we can do this again on next week if you'd like. If we can do an earlier slot, I'd love to do this next week again if you are free.
Yeah, I'll just check my calendar, but hopefully, if there's nothing clashing, I'd love to. Yeah,
actually, great. I'm with Al-Fadi next week. early, but that's at 4 p.m. 4 p.m. I'm
Well,
free after that. So yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. If you've got the energy after
Now
that, yeah,
I'll
absolutely,
be
yeah.
doing a live
No,
stream
this has
with
been
Al
fun.
Fadi on next week. So, but yeah, why not?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, this has been great, Lloyd, and thanks for
Yeah. So
inviting me on.
anything you want to say? Because I just realized the time. It's been 2 hours. The time flew.
Oh yeah. No, I don't know how do we tie up all this. I suppose maybe the main thing I would say is I think what we're seeing is we see the early period, the
Yeah, I'm gonna have
Ethiopia
to
and
fix
Yemen
you
from
again.
centuries
Yeah.
before.
Sorry. You
Yeah.
disappeared. Sorry.
Um, oh, okay, no hassle. I presume people can hear me. But so you have the early period, then we have the northern the northern narrative comes from, places like Iraq and so forth, Syria, and then later, um, in terms of talking about the origins of Islam, we have the influence of Iran and Greater Iran. So the time when the Hadiths were being written, that's all coming from there. So in terms of trying to think of the origins of Islam in terms of layers, I think the bottom layer is definitely Ethiopia and Yemen, and then the next layer is it's got to do with Syria, Iraq, and the Jordan area, and then on top of that you have Persia, and that's basically how we would kind of
Yeah.
segment it. I think that's the bit I would take from it. So all of this combines together to explain the origins of Islam, and we're just really looking at the first few centuries. But to get a full understanding, we have to look at all the different additions that have been added to Islam over the centuries, which is quite complicated. But I think the Ottoman period was a massive watershed moment for Islam in terms of solidifying certain things, or clarifying certain beliefs and so forth. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's all I want to say, really.
No, thank you. So hold on. Bazalgette says the names of the children of Saul are changed from Meribal to Mephibosheth between Kings and Chronicles in Old Testament. Meribal to Mephibosheth. So Mephistopheles and Bosheth, which is the same, the source of the name Moloch. Interesting.
Right, okay.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so let's. Yeah. Unfortunately, the large camera thing has gone out of whack, and I can't fix it right now.
Oh, that's it.
But guys,
That's okay.
let's end, and we'll stay online just for a minute, Mel. But sorry to terminate so abruptly. I did not realize the time, but
No
I
problem.
have to
No
call
problem.
it. But no, thank you, everyone. I hope this has been enlightening. Mel, this has been fantastic. I mean, what's amazing,
it's
I'm
been
so
fun.
glad we had the opportunity to speak, because it shows that we are speaking a single narrative. There's no conflict.
No, absolutely none. No, I thought there might be initially, because I was thinking, well, what if there's a conflict between the Harab?
And then Ethiopia, and then dive into some of the Ethiopian connections to Islam.
Yeah,
So that's coming up, and I'm doing Gnosticism as well, because man, there's clearly obvious parallels with Gnosticism. It's just
yeah,
undeniable.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
so yeah, guys, thank you all very much. I'll end it here, and it's been just over two. It's been 2 hours. Wow, Mal, we thought, what are we going to talk about? Suddenly,
There's never a problem to find material. No,
no.
it's
But
easy.
guys,
Yeah.
yeah. So let's hope we meet up in a week, guys. I'll keep you informed. And should we do the next on your channel, Mal, or back on my channel?
I don't mind. Yeah, either one. Well, we'll communicate, and we'll make a
Okay, yeah.
decision. But I'm quite happy to do it on your
Yeah, we
channel.
have over
Like, I don't
80
mind.
watching right now, which is great. Thank you all very much. Clayt, the
Brilliant.
JW, just arrived. So, guys, thank you very much. This has been really enlightening, Mal. Thank you. I'm very honored. I mean,
Yeah.
you're a legend. You
No.
started this. You inspired me
Oh,
to
no.
do this. And, of course, Jay's inspired us all. So,
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it's gone.
So, yeah.
My pleasure, man.
So thank you, guys. Good night. And Mal, this has been really, I mean, I think we were going to change things. Things are going to change due to this.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I think we're pushing the rock off the side of the hill, and I think it's gonna
The guys
catch
are
up
saying
speed.
it's buffering on this side. The guys are telling me
Okay.
that they're buffering, but I'm showing CPU at less than 2%. I'm streaming 60 frames a second. I'm doing 10 megabytes up.
Oh,
And I'm throwing a lot of hardware at this, so it's looking solid.
yeah.
So I've got a 0% skip frame rate. So yeah, guys, YouTube does this to me, right? Audio problems. You know what YouTube does every time I do this. YouTube starts to
Yeah,
get funny.
yeah,
So, guys,
yeah. It's a way,
yeah,
it's a way of censoring in a way.
I think so. I mean, yeah, people have audio problems and YouTube does it. So, guys, thank you very much. All the best and God bless. Thank you, Mel.
All the best. Thank you.